Welcome to the Sage Women podcast, hosted by Melanie White and Dr. Nick Engera. We have real conversations with real women, health professionals, and coaches who share stories about perimenopause, menopause, and a range of women's health issues. Please subscribe so you get the latest updates every fortnight.
It's Melanie White here on the Sage Women podcast, and I am so pleased to introduce Sadie Goddard-Wright. I've got
Pardon?
all of
Yeah.
Right, and got all of your names in there from Sadie J Wellness Coaching. All these double-barreled names. How do you cope, Sadie?
I don't know. I that's why I just corrected it because I know so many people do. Sorry, Mel. And it's something that I decided to keep my maiden name and my married name. And yeah, it's a tricky one to fill in the space of a passport declaration. I can tell you.
I know that you have a rich history and experience of working with women, and you've had your own journey. And so I'd love to unpack some of those things in this episode with you, to hear your story or stories, because I think that's what people really want to hear, is what's going on for people, and how do other people manage different things, that come up for them. So maybe you'll get to start by asking you a little bit about your health journey, if that's okay.
Absolutely. My most recent health journey was back in 2020. I was diagnosed with early breast cancer just before we went into the pandemic. So it was a tricky time, but it was also a time where I'd already started isolating. So for me, being quite an extrovert and sporty and always being outside sort of person, I had to already start practicing that was non-negotiable. So it came as a bit of a surprise. We came back from a gorgeous holiday in Port Fairy, which will stand out as the holiday now because it was so specific that I'd lost a lot of weight intentionally. I was feeling the best I had because I've always gone up and down in my weight. So I'd lost about 14 kilos, which was a
Wow.
godsend, really, because what that allowed me to do, because of the positioning of the tumor that was sitting under my right breast on the rib cage, was that it wouldn't be something that you would normally feel very easily.
Okay.
Even though I'd done the annual women's checks and put my arms up in the air, and I'd done all of that very regimentedly every year because of low iron, not knowing that we wouldn't find it, and it was a slow growing tumour. So my doctor and I were as puzzled with the diagnosis, knowing that I'd been on top of pretty much my diet and everything else.
How did you find that? It's interesting. I mean, you hear a lot about breast lumps and changes in
Mm.
nipple and so forth, but I haven't ever heard of a tumor between a breast and a rib cage like that. So how did you come across?
Mm. Nor had I. I honestly didn't, because you stereotypically want to find a lump and a pea and the pea size. And I think that's where I'm very much in my journey now, is making sure that, like yourself with Sage Women's Health, is that there's a lot that isn't made aware. Mine was the size of a jelly bean, basically. It was very long. It was sitting underneath the breast. So when I was in the shower, when we just literally come back off holiday, I've written an article recently saying that I was basically reminiscing the holiday with water coming down my back, and then did my normal wash without a sponge. And there it was. And I just literally froze and went, no, surely it's not there. I lay
So
on the bed.
you could feel it
I could feel it,
underneath, right?
and I could then see it, which was all very puzzling, because I hadn't been that vigilant while
Yeah,
I
okay.
was, I guess, enjoying the weight loss journey. But I've always used a sponge with no sponge when I'm in the shower. So I was very grateful for that. But obviously, potentially in my mind, I was only working around the boobs when I was washing, and not really going right under.
The
So even my
underbust. Yeah.
surgeon said it was very, very unique, even though he has seen it before, for it to be so set back. Um, and it is what it is, but thankfully I'd lost the weight and was able, and it protruded. I do sort of also feel that surgery that I had about 6 months prior, even though there's no proof of it, but I had an endometrial ablation for the iron, to help the iron, and I was already in perimenopause then as well. So having low iron and still menstruating, with then the option of an endometrial ablation, we'd had our family, so it was a decision I could make lightly and quite definitively, really. So I went ahead and had that in August 19. And I said to my surgeon, would it have sped up anything? Like, would it have mucked around with my hormones? Because how can I have a slow growing tumour that was then very obviously there? There was no answer, Mel. There was, chicken or the egg scenario. At the end of the day, we didn't spend much time on that. We just went, we need to deal with what we've got to deal with. And within a week of diagnosis, I had my first mastectomy.
Wow, that must have been a lot to being through the pandemic and being taken away from your normal active social habits, and then having that diagnosis luckily early, and because it's in an unusual place, and then having to have a mastectomy. That sounds like a very big year for you.
It was. And it's only when I talk about it now that I was just doing the do. I had to. It's my sense of positivity within my own self, that I've always been quite an intuitive person, and I knew that I was going to get through it. I knew I was going to give it the best I could. It was such a surprise. Again, feeling so elated that I'd lost the weight and I felt great. To then be, I'm not saying given, but finding out that something had been there for a while, but I never knew. And one of the things that I didn't say, and I still won't say, is that why me? And I think I've mentioned it to you before. If it's not you, it's another lovely person with any diagnosis. So keeping very to the core of what I value with that integrity was, I need to own this, and we as a family unit. It was only after my second operation, which was the axillary clearance, which meant that all of my lymph nodes in my right armpit were removed, because they did find some, actually double the amount in my sentinel node. So they checked 2 sentinel nodes and removed those on the first mastectomy, and then found some cancer in there, and then rang me and said, look, we do need to have you back in. There was some cancer in the sentinel node. We need to check the lymph nodes. Fortunately, those were all clear. And I did ask them to put them back in, but they said that was not possible. So I was then on a lymphedema prevention journey as well at the same time, knowing that I was very limited, but I did all the exercises that I was told to do. If I wasn't doing them, I certainly had people telling me to do it. But it was after that axillary clearance that we were then declared in a pandemic on the 13th, just after my operation was the 13th of March. And then I think the Monday was when I came out. Why is everybody fretting about, all the toilet paper and what's going on? Where have I been?
Yeah.
So
It's a double whammy.
Yes, because when I got diagnosed on the 12th of February, which we call my D-Day, the diagnosis day, it was pretty much the day after straight into seeing a surgeon. Fortunately, I paid for it privately to get the ball rolling. Friday was the pre-operation exams and scans and everything. That was all day. I've never felt actually quite so vulnerable, being told to be here, there, and everywhere, and in fact, like a little ticket item going, right, you're next in line to this. So that was quite overwhelming. It was probably the most overwhelming day through the whole lot. Because then the Monday, obviously, we got the tests back, and Wednesday I was in. Didn't have much chance to think about it. I'm glad I didn't. And the rest is 7 surgeries later, for part of a reconstructive journey, which I chose again to do with very clear direction that for me, I wanted to feel whole again and balanced. I felt extremely unbalanced with one boob.
Yeah. Wow, Sadie, that's a big change. And I know you to be a very positive, optimistic, inspired person. And it sounds like that's really gotten you through some very challenging times. And, I was quite alarmed seeing the statistics on breast cancer. They say 1 in 7 women will have breast cancer in their lifetime, and 80% of those diagnoses happen after the age of 50 or during menopause,
Mm, mm.
which is quite alarming.
Well, I was 44, and I remember a nurse friend of mine saying, when I got back after the core biopsy, because the biopsy, I obviously went to the doctors in the very beginning. It was just before Australia Day, and we decided to go away and not tell our daughters what was going on. We didn't really know. So until we're a very open family, I wanted them to be part of it from the very beginning and nurture them through it and not keep anything from them. That was our decision to do that. This was a big thing, so why would we want to hide it and do it just on our own? So when I went for the biopsy, it was suspicious of malignancy. And then 3 days later, I had to go in for the core biopsy. But because by that time, and the positioning of where it was, when I lay down, there was no breast tissue. Now, that was a combination of it, obviously now looking back, the cancer eating it away, or shrinking it, and also the weight loss. So I was sort of in the conundrum of, was this weight loss? Was this,
Wow,
but my boob did look smaller, but they had to be very careful when they did the core biopsy, without obviously puncturing any organs. So they did it well. And it then obviously came back as hormone receptive, ER and PR positive, and HER negative. And all of that I can say now, but I didn't even know there were different variations of breast cancer. My mum had DCIS, for example, which I then learned only then from my surgeon that, well, it is breast cancer, but it hasn't evaded the ducts yet. Mine had. So as to whether it started there and became what it was. But I also did end up having a massive, what I call the fuzzy TV screen scattering on the right-hand side. So my breast cancer tumour was about 5 o'clock. And then on the 9 o'clock was certainly a scattering, which is why he wasn't able to do a lumpectomy.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
Wow. And so I guess that means in terms of then managing perimenopause, that throws a bit of a spanner in the works.
Yes. Yeah. I certainly went straight into menopause. So because I was fit and active and I did have that positivity, that didn't need any, which I know is certainly there for women who want it and potentially need it, but a psychometric sort of testing just to make sure that I was okay and on an even keel before we started any of the surgery. So that was a blessing that I guess, even though I've been a community facilitator for many years and I teach people well-being, resilience, and feeling in a flurry, even though I had those tools, it feels different when you're using them for your own well-being. But at the same time, what a fantastic opportunity over the last 20 years to have access to that, which isn't necessarily something that other people will know about. So perimenopause, I think, had started to me quite early, probably in my early 40s. But when I think about it now, I've been quite arthritic for a long time.
Right.
I've had lower back issues since I played hockey. I did Zumba for 10 years, twisted my knee, so some of it you think, is it induced now being in postmenopause? Because I was put in tamoxifen, onto tamoxifen straight away, but then because I could tolerate it, they then put me on to exemestane, which is an aromatase inhibitor, for 10 years. So I've got another 6 years of that. And to be honest, I'd be on it for the rest of my life if they said that would be the case, because I have managed the symptoms quite well, knowing I had sort of perimenopause symptoms before. But I see it as an opportunity now to, every hot flush I have, which makes me feel teary sometimes, it's a nice reminder of what I've been through, but it also means I'm here to be able to have that hot flush. And I think a lot of women would feel that way. So instead of going, oh God, another one, which catches you by surprise. I know many of us would know that. But having been clinically induced into menopause, and that was very, very acutely present within probably about the first 12 months, I was having a lot of hot flushes, a lot of bone ache, a lot of muscle aches. And also not being able to move so much because I had 3 surgeries in the 1 year. So,
Right. And so you couldn't take MHT, obviously. So how were you, or how have you been managing your symptoms? And especially given that you were limited with mobility, because I know exercise is really helpful. What have you done, and how has that helped you? Recognizing also the caveat that every woman is unique. But we know that there are some things that work, that are evidence-based.
Oh, absolutely. And I think being with that insight has helped me greatly. I think even before getting certified finally as a health awareness coach and being exposed to even more ways to mentally cope and mentally manage, because I love learning. I'm a lover of learning. There's always something that I love to learn. And it was about what I call the RDD, the read, digest, and deliver to myself, and take that on board. So that was a big learning for me, to actually really digest some extra coping things that I was already doing. So I've always loved walking, and I've always loved hiking, and I'm a diplomat in terms of precision health, and that is so true, because I'm always outside. If you can't find me inside, I'm literally outside. The other big thing for me, which I am now hooked on, excuse the pun, is in 2021, I'd just come out from the reconstructive journey. So I was in, or the beginning of, for 9 days in hospital, and made it just outside. Got outside just before Christmas Eve. And one of the things that one of the nurses said to me was, "What's 2021 going to look like for you?" And I said, "Certainly different to 2020. And she said, "What's one of the things that you would like to do?" I said, "You're trying to coach me." And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I've always wanted to do dragon boat racing." Pre-children, it wasn't an option. Really, I was working not near where they were practicing, and then had my family. And I said, "You know what? I think I'd love to do dragon boat." She said, "That's great for lymphedema prevention. And because you've lost your lymph nodes on your right side, you've got to be really careful not to get infection, and build that muscle tone up as well to support everything, and the lymphatic system, which is the main part of it." So I've been dragon boating. I basically contacted a team in Adelaide. They welcomed me with open arms. I finished paddling with them last year in 23, and 4 of us who were breast cancer survivors decided to set up a team of our own. So we've got our own team, our own constitution, and we welcome men and women. And a couple of other people in the team have had different sorts of cancer, and it's not a breast cancer only team. That's the important thing. We wanted to be a community, open, for men and women, no matter what experiences you're having, whatever chronic disease you have, come and be part of a community. And we very rarely actually talk about, my shoulder hurts, or the lymph system's not working. It's actually our release. So, yeah. So
There's
that's
a
been
couple
really great.
there's a couple of really interesting things that I heard you talking about then, and one is the fact that you took time to learn about yourself and who you are. You mentioned being a diplomat, and for those that don't understand the PH 360, the precision health system of classifying health types, and your love of learning and diving into that, I have that sense that that was a big part of your journey, was saying, well, who am I? What do I stand for? What's unique about me? How do I operate in the world? That kind of sense came out of what you described. And then I love that you had that nurse that was essentially social prescribing and saying, what are you going to do? And you've come up with dragon boating, and she knew that it was great for lymphedema. And so then you found something that's fun. And as you said, it kind of is about the exercise, and it is about the recovery, but it's not. It's that community open group of exchange, and it's a fun activity, and it's bringing people together, and it's
Mm.
inclusive, and all of those things we know improve well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know,
And you don't,
it's,
sorry to interrupt you, but you don't
yeah,
see that on how do you manage menopause symptoms. People don't say dragon boating.
no, I know. And, you know, at the end of the day, I was thinking about it before we jumped on, is nothing will ever take away the scars that I have, that I no longer have nipples, that I've got scars that have fortunately faded, but I can still see the scars here. And I've since had another surgery that was for fat grafting to redo some just incorrections in May. So I've got more scars from where they took that. So I had to have some liposuction from my stomach and my back area, which was probably more from that area. I said, obviously, when I lay down, gravity and menopausal body
Yeah.
provided them with a bit more. They went, oh, we'll take a bit more from here. Nothing will take away the scars and the experiences of going through all the scans and all the operations and sitting and waiting and having your name called and all of that. And many women who most likely listen to Sage is they know someone or they've been there. Obviously, our fellow coach Robin was on here. She's talking about her experiences and how she managed and how she was also made aware that there were other things happening in her life that she needed to lower the stress. I've given up alcohol this year. That took probably a bit longer for friends to not accept it by any means, but just get used to that because Sadie would have a glass of wine. I decided that my menopause or hot sweats aren't as much, hot flushes, and I just feel better. The medication I'm on, I believe, is the trigger of most of my headaches, as much as having headaches most of my life, having hypertension anyway. There's a lot of genetic things that I've been fortunate to experience but at the same time, I also see that as I'll be the guinea pig of all of this and say, breast cancer diagnosis, straight into menopause, think I already was anyway, had all of these existing aches and pains anyway. But even 10 years of Zumba, even I ended up having to stop because of the breast cancer. It was an opportunity to build a community who are already still there for me now. So I think menopause can be quite an isolating experience, but it's also what I call the positive pivot. And it's just turning around the aches and pains and knowing that even exercise has got some good chemicals, good sort of releasing things that are happening to take your mind away from the pain. I still walk like a duck down the stairs in the morning, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then once I'm oiled up and have my coffee, I've sort of forgotten that I actually hurt.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has been a unique journey, but one that a lot of women will go through and will continue to go through, where it's a hormone receptive breast cancer that I had, which meant I couldn't have HRT or MRT. And I've managed to find ways and have a bit of humor with it as well, that it has aged me. I know that. I've got more wrinkles. But at the same time, what was the story or the video movie that said, you know, I think it was a Julia Roberts movie, that every wrinkle has a story. And yeah, it's keeping that mindset, which it can take energy. And even this week, having bronchitis and getting a voice for today,
Yeah.
making sure that I rested my body and that as the years go by, I don't always bounce back from a chest cold, which obviously did prove to me as well that I was a little bit run down
Yeah.
beforehand and that I wasn't strong enough at that time, thinking it was hay fever. And knowing that somebody said to me that when your veggie garden isn't the healthiest it is, that's when the bugs start attacking it.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm not a garden that's perishing, but I think coming out of the last surgery as well and just giving myself that time, and I have changed in that respect because I've always been in a hurry. always have been since I was little. There's always something to be doing and shiny objects and,
Yeah.
and that's why I love creating workshops, because on a serious note, my new one in October, in a couple of weeks, Me, Myself and My Midlife Mind, is all about a 2-hour evening in the community with women, talking about self-reflection and giving them that foundational physiological baseline of all of these are happening. Now, if it's okay, let's just leave that there for a moment, because it'll still be there when you leave tonight. But let's focus on how we manage that period of time.
And
And that's not breast cancer related, but obviously sometimes I might mention that I've had my own adversity, but I don't.
your journey.
Yeah.
I think it's a great illustration that everyone has a unique journey in menopause. And as we know, 20% of women, lucky them, have no symptoms, which could be by virtue of their genetics or by virtue of their lifestyle or both. But I love that you're running this workshop helping women to stop and reflect, because so many of us rush, and so many of us have busy lives. And what we don't do is listen to our bodies. We don't reflect on our needs. We don't necessarily attend to our self-care. And it's really important to make space for those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's being open to that learning as well. Just recently, I've got my menopause coach certificate, in terms of having another specialty to offer the women, sorry, because that is my niche. I remember when we were talking about this 2 or 3 years ago, I'm like, Mel, I can't find a niche because I've always been in community. When you've spent 20 years generically in community, apart from youth, in government, delivering lots of community-based, sitting under a tree, being at an RSL, being in a community centre and just flitting yourself around, facilitating serious evidence-based information, because that's my sort of go-to is I don't want to give people any more information. I want to give them practical tips, practical techniques to be able to go home and share it with someone else, or actually just own the right that we think we look after ourselves. But even learning through the menopause cert around the self-myofascial massage, that when you're feeling stress, just a stroke of the arm. We know we do it naturally, but focusing that that's what you're doing. How often do we go, oh, and then, but if you focus that you're doing it, you're also mindfully connecting to your body. So that connection breath is something that I do as well, which is great for pelvic floor, because that's a key thing too, that I've certainly realised only recently. And again, I've been very fortunate to not have many symptoms that weren't already being managed anyway. So it wasn't a shock for me to start hurting, and it wasn't a shock for me to have low libido and all of those things, and hair loss, and competing with that wasn't necessarily a priority. It was living the life and saying, like I did in my book, because I wrote a book halfway through all of this, just as more as a gift book now for my workshops, is live your life with grace and zest if you want to, and be the sunshine in someone's day. And I live by that, or at least I try every day to live by that. But I also acknowledge when sometimes it's just okay.
Yeah. I love that, Sadie. I love your book. I love that you have that attitude. And people talk about the horrors of menopause and the challenges, but I'm really hearing that you're seeing it as a process, that you have capabilities within that process to work through and be the best you can in it, and that there is so much more to do with life out the other side. And I love that you have a workshop coming up, so we'll be able to put some links into the episode notes for this. You'll be running this one again?
Oh, absolutely. I think when I create, I think part of my learning style and personality is I'm the creator of the office. I'm the brainstormer, and I never feel exhausted by being up at, sometimes sadly, 11 o'clock at night when I'm having a second wind, and I should have caught that that go to bed sign.
Yeah.
I genuinely, Mel, in my heart, I love creating workshops. So I always create them from the very beginning with my mind mapping and my project brief and what's my why here and what's my reason for this workshop. So I've got a few awareness sessions that I can run in the corporate space, which I'll be rolling out in 2025. But me, myself, and my midlife mind is something that I'm doing in person to start with. But again, it can be hybrid. It can be online. It can be broken into bits. I never think, right, it's just a workshop that's in person. It's not going to be online. So I'm really fortunate to have the foresight to see, okay, if I'm going to do this, I want to be able to use it in various different ways. So what I am going to do in December as well as a follow-on from it, as a bit of a beta testing, and I've already got 3 people interested in it, is a 7-day midlife mind reset. So it's a bit of a play on this workshop, and I hope that it's a 7-day reset that I can provide the participants of that to then have the something else, because there's always got to be something else. Not just in terms of marketing a call to action, but also to always be visible. And I think my vision now in terms of my niche is certainly women's health has always been there, but also being 50 myself next year is if I can make one change in someone's life or help them do that, I think you've had success. And
I would totally agree. Yeah.
I just have a bit of a licorice all sorts box of things myself, but isn't that lived experience? Isn't that being a coach also, where you go, yep, I'm in menopause, isn't it great? Yep, this is how I manage it. These are the techniques I've used. They may help you. And also knowing that, like I say, every hot flush is just a reminder of all of the other things that sit just on the periphery. They'd never dissolve. They're just there. The fear of recurrence from me is always there too. And certainly when I was told I couldn't take any hormone, MHT or, is it?
Yeah. MHT.
Yeah, MHT and HRT, which again, HRT for many years was like, oh, don't go there. Now they're finding out that the benefits outweigh some of the risks for women who need and may benefit from it or have already acknowledged that that's the path they want to take. And I think that's up to us to decide. Not having the decision because they haven't come up with something that can give me estrogen or any other woman estrogen back, which is obviously what creates the brain fog and many other symptoms that I'm fully aware of. But I just want to live my life, and part of it is giving back, doing podcasts like with you and being real, being authentic, having the integrity that we've all got something that we can offer. And it just takes that little gold nugget that someone else goes, I hear you, I see you.
Thank you so much for your time today, Sadie.
My absolute pleasure. I've been so looking forward to it.
Me too. It's always a gift speaking with you because you're so warm and positive and compassionate. And I know that your story will resonate with people. And I just love the way you've courageously worked through some very difficult times and you've come out the other end wanting to enable to help other people on their journeys. You have so much to give, and I just really acknowledge and appreciate what you have to offer. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. I think part of it is, especially when I'm coaching one-on-one, is their journey is not my journey. But I can be sitting there with my lips sealed and hearing them and being able to support them live their journey their way. I call it my wellness, my way. Could be another workshop, you never know. To hold that very, very close to my heart, that there's certainly the seriousness to ensure that anyone, if it's a participant at a workshop or if it's a client one-on-one, or it's an information session, that you're not standing there and it's all about you. but you're being able to hear the room. And if the time is right, that person may come up and say, sounds like you've been through something. And I can share if I need to, but I don't always. And that's not to hold it as a secret. It's just not the forefront of my coaching. Women are.
Yeah. And I hope that people, at least one person that hears this, or many more, will have an experience because of it, a positive experience, and have some hope.
Yeah, absolutely, Mel. Thank you
Thanks.
so much for the opportunity to
Thank
share
you,
my
Sadie.
story.
We'll put links to you in the show notes, and I look forward to seeing
Wonderful.
you again soon.
All right. Take care, Mel.
Take care.
See you. Bye.
See you.